everybody. It's William Holland here for another episode of the Money Tree Real Estate Investor Podcast. I'm super excited today. I've got Bethany Finch with me. She is founder of American Made Home Solutions. She's been empowering busy individuals and community leaders to create sustainable growth through financial freedom and helping them create legacy through real estate and financial literacy. And one thing I really like about her, she keeps Christ at the center of her mission. So, Bethany, it's great to have you today. How are you?
William, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to get to meet a fellow Christian for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of good people, believers and non-believers in the real estate space, and that's one thing I really like about it is just being able to build those relationships and get to know people better. So I know you've been in real estate a long time. You've operated as many as 8 different businesses. Where did you get started? Why did you want to become an entrepreneur, and how did you kind of step into that role?
So I have been off and on my own since I was about 10 years old, in and out of foster care and different things, and had to learn how to figure out how to pay for school clothes. And I wanted to do sports, so I had to figure out how to pay that, had to pay for meals, all of that such, and had to figure out how to do it. Well, this is back in the day where kids could still work, and I had to figure out how to be creative. So I did as much as I could every summer, working 2 and 3 jobs. And then during the school year, I had to get a little more creative. So my entrepreneurial side started coming through. I started selling things to kids at school and finding ways to, hey, you need to get those chores done. I think you need to pay me $5, so I'll go do your chores. And you so started working the kids pretty good, and then figured out I could work the parents pretty good, and kept myself funded through the years. And then by the time high school graduation, they're like, "Oh, you need to go to college." And I'm like, "What do I want to do that for?" And they said, "Well, you to get a good job." And I'm thinking of all the jobs I've already done. And so I'm like, okay, if college is supposed to be a means to an end, I need a business degree, and I'm not going to pay for it, so someone else has got to pay for it. So I was a merit scholarship and winner, and used that to pay for a business degree, and said, okay, now what? I got into corporate America 6 months, thinking that this was going to be it, the dream job, the glass, the view, the office, the whole. 6 months later, I hated it. I hated it. I didn't want nothing with cubicle life. It was not for me. It was not my cup of tea. So I went back to the entrepreneurial world and figured out a way to make the life that my family needed, which was a lot of flexibility. And that's ultimately how I got started, was the need to be there and for my family financially, but also physically present when my kids were there.
Definitely, yeah. No, I think that's really cool. I've never worked a fast food job. I think
Yep.
there are great opportunities for a lot of people, but thankfully I just never had to do that. I started my own lawn mowing business and, was going to garage sales, buying stuff, selling
Yep.
stuff. It's been really cool to be a part of, something like this where you do have the flexibility. So, as I was telling you before the show started, I quit my job 6 months ago, going on month 7 now, and just the flexibility and being able to really focus wholeheartedly on the goals and dreams that I have has been really amazing. And it's been cool to see God just provide for me, with the lack of a consistent salary.
Right. Well, and I think, your name, the Money Tree Podcast, money doesn't grow on trees. And it's like, but it does grow on trees, right? We fertilize the trees, we chop them down, we use them, we replant them. Pretty sure that's money growing on trees. Only the ones that are looking at it going, hey, there's money there, and doing something with it, they're the ones making the money, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we'll definitely dive more into investing and, real estate and all those good things, but that was really the imagery that I wanted to have, with not only my logo, which is a tree, so it's an oak seed, an acorn, sprouting and then growing into a sapling and then turning into a tree, which can then turn into a forest. But like you said, it's something you start small. It takes time, it takes provisions and care, but with investing in real estate, it can turn into something really great over time. So appreciate you highlighting the name and everything. That's cool.
Absolutely. Well, McDonald's didn't start out McDonald's, right? Ray Kroc started with one restaurant.
Mhm.
It was a
That's
milkshake stand.
that's right. So take us back. So you had 8 different businesses. Did you start off in real estate as an entrepreneur, or how did you get focused on that area?
So I started some of the early businesses were direct sales businesses. I was Avon at one point. I was Pampered Chef. I was trying to figure out, okay, I need flexibility. I need income. It didn't take me long to figure out I was trading time for money and I was defeating the purpose. I'm not trying to create another job. I'm trying
Yeah.
to create a business. So there was no real business model in place for any of those. So I quickly scaled out of those and started a consulting business and started going to everything from hotels and motels. And I used it as a way to pay for our dates when we were first married and the kids were little and money was tight. So they were the ones paying for everything, paying for our date nights and all that. And I'd go evaluate, do stuff afterwards. And they took care of us for a long time. And then I went, okay, this again, I need to scale this. It's not big enough. So at that point, I started looking and investigating and thinking about my retirement, going, I got no retirement. What am I going to do? Right? This isn't going to work. So I had $250. And I sat down with an Edward Jones guy. And this Edward Jones guy is like, well, $250 is the minimum to open your own IRA and get this started and this and that. And I'm like, but you're going to say what I invest in. Your little computer is going to put this in the algorithm. And you're, oh, yeah, but it's going to be a growth fund and blah, blah, blah. And all I heard was absolute no control. You don't really care about me. I'm the smallest pea in your pod, you know, and that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I didn't know any other options, right? Who's leading the financial industry as far as education, right? I didn't know who else to go to. So at that point, I'm driving back and I'm just discouraged. I just feel like that's not right. It's not a good fit for me. So I hear, if you ever heard those on the radio, hey, come spend 2 hours and learn about how to get started in real estate. Have you ever heard those?
Oh yeah, too many, too often.
Yeah. Well, I had never heard one before, and I heard one that day, and I went, well, I'll go for free. I'll go listen. I'll take 2 hours of my time and go check this out. I wasn't even 30 minutes in, and I knew this is what I needed to spend that 250 on. So that 250 paid for a 3-day weekend. It gets better. Paid for the 3-day weekend, the gas and the food for that whole weekend for me and one of my brothers, who was the general contractor. And by the time day one was done, I already had my first property under contract. I already had a potential buyer lined up. And I'm like, this is it. This is great. So obviously, it would make more sense to invest in the actual, training and education if you did all this with me with just this little tiny bit. So I saw the value of the education quick. I hit the ground running. Didn't know what I didn't know. So at my first property, I get under contract. Well, that buyer fell out. My coach is like, oh, well, you're not going to be able to wholesale this. And I'm like, well, why not? And he's like, well, you wrote the contract wrong. So I had just enough information to get started, but not enough to do it right. And so he's like, this is going to be a learning lesson, Bethany. You're going to lose your earnest money. And I'm like, I'm not losing $100. No way. I said, isn't this what I paid you to teach me how to do? He's like, yeah, but we only got 3 days. And I'm like, so in 3 days, we learned how to get everything set up to flip my very first property and get it all done, figured out, didn't lose my $100 earnest money. And that started our renovation side of the business. We'd already been in multifamily at that point. My husband had started as a groundskeeper and had worked his way all the way up through asset management. But on the corporate side, they don't like to promote you to asset management because then they got to pay you and then they got to do the shares and all this. So they literally kept him as a maintenance supervisor on 5,000 doors and paid him a maintenance supervisor wage. And
So
he was 200 miles a day and just away from the family, stressed to the max, massive contracts and this and that. And I was doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to help him get through all of it. And I'm like, we could do this. We could own our own apartments. And he's like, he couldn't understand it. He was a great employee, had no business sense, and had no idea how that could be possible. So the moment I realized if I could flip one property, I could flip the whole apartment unit, right? So I started looking to buy apartments. And that made way more sense. The numbers are much more logical. And I started doing it without him knowing because he was afraid and wanted me to stay in single family. And I'm like, that's a job. I don't want a job. So that's how it just kind of the snowball kept going and it just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
it's awesome. So you started getting a lot of momentum. So currently, what type of projects are you doing at this point in your career?
So definitely multifamily. We've gone down as small as 40 units, all the way up to, we don't like to go above about 330. I'm not a big fan of like cities, and they kind of tend to be that once they get that size. But we're also doing build to rent now. So we're doing ground up development. But what we saw in COVID was that people didn't want to be trapped into their apartments, right? With this kid on Zoom and this kid on Zoom and mom and dad trying to be on Zoom and too many people in too many spaces. So they wanted single family houses. So we're doing build to rent, which is single family houses, but it still has the amenities of the apartments. So it's a big community. And so you get that community feel, but you also get your space. So they have yards, things like that. So we're doing those ground up developments. We got 3 of those going. And then I still do multifamily renovations and regular syndications. And then we're also working on getting some multifamily office conversions going, trying to get 10,000 doors in 3 years back into workforce housing. So that's our main focus, our main goal. And that's going to take a lot of collaboration with some really good people doing some amazing things. And we believe God has shown us the need is great, but how do you meet that need? So finding that and working that and figuring that out, God just continues to reveal more and more to us. So on the conversion side of things, we're 100% remote. So we're traveling all across the country. What we see everywhere is empty office space, empty retail space just sitting there. And we need housing more than we need this empty space sitting there doing nothing. So we're actively looking at and working in partnerships to convert that empty space into usable space. So does it make sense to convert it back to retail? Not necessarily. So some of it we're converting into multifamily. Some of it we're converting actually. One of our partners is converting it into storage. So for us, it's all amazing partnerships that we're doing. So sometimes we're on the asset management side, sometimes we're on the equity side, sometimes we're on the acquisition side. We just have so many different roles, and depends on which market and what the need is, because different partnerships have different needs, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's some of the biggest challenges in converting office space or retail space to the workforce housing?
Keeping the numbers down. A lot of times, because it's a commercial space, you're dealing with commercial contractors, and commercial contractors are used to ramping up their pricing for that. So keeping the numbers down, because if we can't keep the numbers down and we can't keep them in check, then it doesn't fit that workforce housing model. Because then you're having to raise the rent to pay for the cost, and then now you're dealing with luxury instead of workforce housing. So not necessarily making it a luxury, but still offering whatever amenities we can, right? We may not be able to put a pool on the rooftop, but we can put a walking track in, or we can put a pet area in, or we can get maybe a cooperative with a gym and they can get free gym memberships, things like this, so we can keep our costs down. Because that is, the space is the premium, and converting, huge spaces, right? Everybody wants a window, at least one in their house. So you can't just put an empty space in the middle, say, oh, that's an apartment. You got to be a little more creative than that.
I understand. Yeah. So do you also run into problems with like permitting and rezoning of those spaces as well?
Only in areas where it hasn't sat vacant very long. So areas where it's sat vacant for a long time, they're like, please tell us what to do. I mean, because they see it as an eyesore, right? But they also know the need for housing is so great.
Of
So
course.
sometimes a lot of the office space already has like the sprinkler systems and things of this nature. So that's a big conversion issue that you don't have to worry about. A lot of I would say, this younger generation that doesn't want to own homes like the industrial look. So we don't necessarily have to redesign things that would go against that code. So we
That's
can keep
awesome.
beams open, we can keep fire doors, different things like this.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think that's so cool that, you're able to take something that is, vacant or just needs some tender love and care and re-tenant it or rebuild it or rezone it, whatever it takes just to make it useful once again. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and honestly, that's we're just trying to do anything we can to get it out there as quickly as possible, because the huge gap, I mean, they're saying it's up as 6 million units we are short. That gap's not going to get better in tomorrow, right? It's going to take years if you're starting from the ground up. So you've got to find ways to fill those gaps faster, and you've already got vacant buildings. So let's take advantage of that. I can get those ones up and going, 6 months, less than a year easily in most places.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you want to go back to full-time ministry. I know we talked about that before, but, how quickly are you wanting to do that? And what about what you're doing now is going to allow you to be able to step away from these things to do that?
So, one of the things that you'll learn as when you're the person that starts a business, you're the founder, you're the visionary, you aren't necessarily the person that gets it to the next level or gets it, oftentimes you're the one that puts the right people on the bus doing the right jobs, and then as you phase out, they get it to that next level. So that's kind of where we're at, and I'm looking at each of our relationships very strategically because I'm trying to get my time back to me. I'm trying to work out of a job. I've got some health issues and things that I'm always going to have to deal with. And so recognizing that I want my time to be free to do the things that I want to do in the ministry. We do storm recovery and some different things, but we mostly want to focus on working with the sex trafficking victims. So to do that, I need my time. I need my mind free creatively. So really making sure that we've got the right people on the right bus doing the right things is what we're really focused on. And it'll be within the next 3 years. We'll have that all in place. So we're looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess to kind of wrap things up, what's like the most exciting thing that you've been able to do through real estate so far?
There's so many that are exciting. Like the first time we do a first time home buyers program, anybody that's been in one of our rentals, single family or multifamily, if they've been in our program for a year, we allow them to come alongside us and we do a first time home buyers program that they have to go through our financial training program to get qualified to buy a home. Then when they figure out the price point that they can afford, we go out and find a flip home, and then they put in sweat equity with us. Then we keep the price down so that they can afford it. We already know they're qualified, and then ultimately we're able to sell it to them. So if price starts creeping up because some changes have been made or whatever, they're choosing, okay, well, let's not do this because I can do that later. Or Bethany, don't have your guys do this. Just do the roof. We'll take care of the paint, things like that. And seeing how many times, when you hand over those keys to them and they're just bawling when they're sending you the first picture of them, their Thanksgiving, their first Christmas, their first birthday party. It's so empowering to realize you've been able to change a person's life by simply providing something that is just a necessity of their life. So it's pretty exciting to see that. It's always exciting to see God's hand in the smallest of things. So whether it's helping a contractor who's feeling discouraged and frustrated because he knows how to be a roofer, but he has no idea how he's ever going to retire because he knows nothing about business, and being able to come alongside him and show him, look, let me help you here. We can teach you this. We can show you this. You come alongside us. You do these. You take care of this. We take care of you. And it's an amazing thing to see them light up when now they can see hope at the end of their tunnel, because so many contractors give up because they see no hope. And we need as many tradespeople as we can. They're far and few between and not enough going to school for it. So it's always exciting.
Definitely, yeah, that's amazing. It's really cool and inspiring to know that there's people like you out there just, making a difference beyond making a buck. So I commend you on that.
Yeah, well, that's just the Lord. I just got to be the one used for it, right? Someone's going to do it. I'm just thankful it was me in those times, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, how can people get in contact with you, Bethany, if they'd like to learn more or connect with you further?
Sure. So LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me. We have our own YouTube channel. The great thing about our YouTube channel, it's under our company name, American Made Home Solutions. And the great thing about that is it's chock full of 5 years of free education. They can learn anything they want to, from executive rentals to credit to how to get started in real estate to apartments, single family. It's all on there. So it's a huge resource. And then we have lots of opportunities there. They can reach out to us. So if they're wanting to, a lot of times the business owners are the ones that actually need the credit help because they never set up business credit. So we actually built an entire business credit program to help contractors and business owners get it off their personal side, get that on the business side, build it out, scale their business. And so many people just don't know that and don't know how to do it the right way. So we built that out, and that's all that information's on there. They just need to reach out.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you today, and thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, William.